My brother and I fell in love with the same woman. In the end, she decided, "My name's Julian, and I'm 24 years old." It was a warm summer evening when my brother Rob and I walked into the bustling party. We had just finished another week of work, and this gathering seemed like the perfect escape. Little did we know that our lives were about to change forever. Party was in full swing, with laughter and music filling the air. People were dancing, chatting, and enjoying themselves. Rob and I made our way to the bar, grabbing drinks and scanning the room for familiar faces. That's when I saw her. She was standing by the patio doors, her presence like a beacon amid the crowd. Her name was Megan. Her long, wavy hair cascaded down her back, and she had a radiant smile that seemed to light up the entire room. I couldn't take my eyes off her. "Hey, Julian, check her out," Rob said, nudging me with his elbow. I glanced at him and saw that he too was captivated by Megan. There was an unspoken agreement between us. We were both drawn to her, and it was clear that things were about to get complicated. I took a deep breath and decided to approach her. As I made my way through the crowd, my heart raced with anticipation. Megan was chatting with a few friends, and I waited for a natural break in the conversation before introducing myself. "Hi, I'm Julian," I said, extending my hand with a warm smile. "I couldn't help but notice you from across the room. Mind if I join you?" Megan looked up at me, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Sure, Julian. I'm Megan. Nice to meet you." Her voice was melodic, and I felt an instant connection. We started talking about the party, our interests, and what brought us there. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and I found myself opening up to her in a way I hadn't with anyone else before. As the evening progressed, Rob joined us. He had a natural charm that was hard to resist, and it wasn't long before he was engaging Megan in conversation as well. The three of us laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed each other's company. I could see Rob's eyes light up whenever Megan spoke, and I knew he was as drawn to her as I was. The night wore on, and the party began to wind down. Megan suggested we take a walk outside to get some fresh air. Rob and I exchanged a glance, both of us eager to spend more time with her. We followed her out to the garden, where the moonlight cast a soft glow on the surrounding flowers. We sat on a bench, and the conversation turned more personal. Megan spoke about her passions, her dreams, and her life. I was mesmerized by her sincerity and the way she made me feel like I was the only person in the world. Rob seemed equally captivated, and I could sense the silent competition between us. At one point, Megan's hand brushed against mine as she reached for her drink. The touch was electric, and I felt a jolt of emotion that I hadn't experienced before. I glanced at Rob and saw him looking at Megan with the same intensity. As the night drew to a close, Megan said her goodbyes and left the party. Rob and I were left standing in the garden, air heavy with unspoken words. It was clear that the connection we felt with Megan was real, but it also meant that things were going to be complicated. We walked back to our apartment, the silence between us thick with tension. "What a night," Rob finally said, breaking the silence. "She's incredible." "Yeah," I replied, my mind racing with thoughts of Megan. "She really is." We both knew that our feelings for Megan were strong, and it was evident that we were both falling for her. The evening had been magical, but it also set the stage for what was to come. We were about to face a dilemma that could drive a wedge between us, and neither of us knew how to navigate the situation. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Megan. Laughter, her smile, and the way she looked at me all replayed in my mind. I knew that our lives had changed in that single evening, and I couldn't shake the feeling that things were only going to get more complicated from here. I hoped that somehow we could find a way to navigate this tangled web of emotions without losing the bond that Rob and I had shared for so many years. But deep down, I knew that this was just the beginning of a journey that would test our relationship and our hearts in ways we had never imagined. As I drifted off to sleep, I could only wonder what the future held for Megan, Bob, and me. The first encounter had set the stage for a whirlwind of emotions, and I braced myself for the challenges ahead. The weeks following that unforgettable night were a whirlwind of emotion. Megan became a central figure in our lives. Rob and I found ourselves spending more time with her than we had anticipated. What began as a chance encounter at a party soon evolved into something much deeper. It was during a lazy Sunday afternoon at the park that I realized just how much I was falling for Megan. Rob and I had planned a casual picnic, and Megan had joined us, bringing along a homemade apple pie that had everyone raving. The sun was warm, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, creating the perfect backdrop for what was quickly becoming a cherished routine. As we sat on the blanket, Megan's laughter filled the air, and I couldn't help but be captivated by it. We talked about everything under the sun: childhood memories, our dreams for the future, and our favorite books and movies. Every time Megan spoke, I felt an undeniable connection, a sense of understanding that I hadn't experienced before. Rob, too, was visibly enchanted. He had taken on the role of the charming storyteller, regaling Megan with tales of our childhood escapades. It was clear that he was trying to impress her, and though I could sense the competition between us, there was an unspoken agreement to keep things light-hearted and friendly. But as the days went by, I began to notice subtle shifts in our interactions. Megan seemed to be drawn to both of us in different ways. With Rob, she was playful and teasing, enjoying his sense of humor and the way he could make her laugh. With me, it was more intimate and reflective. We would often find ourselves in deep conversations, sharing our vulnerabilities and fears, and it was in those moments that I felt the most connected. One evening, Megan invited us to her apartment for dinner. It was an opportunity for a more personal setting, and Rob and I eagerly accepted. As we arrived, the warm glow of candlelight and the aroma of a delicious meal greeted us. Megan had prepared a feast, and the evening promised to be special. Over dinner, the conversation flowed effortlessly. Megan's eyes sparkled as she talked about her passions, and Rob and I found ourselves hanging on her every word. There was a moment when Megan and I shared a private joke, and our eyes met in a way that made my heart skip a beat. I could see Rob watching us, his expression a mix of amusement and something more, a hint of jealousy perhaps. After dinner, we moved to the living room, where Megan played her favorite music. The atmosphere was relaxed, and Rob took the opportunity to dance with Megan, spinning her around with a playful ease. I watched them, feeling a pang of longing as I saw the way they interacted. It was clear that Rob's charm was working its magic, but it also made me realize how deeply I was falling for Megan. As the night wore on, Megan and I ended up sitting on the couch, talking about our favorite childhood memories. The conversation was heartfelt, and I felt a closeness with her that went beyond physical attraction. I could see the same connection in her eyes, and for a moment it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Rob, meanwhile, was in the kitchen, preparing another round of drinks. When he returned, he seemed to sense the growing intimacy between Megan and me. The playful banter turned into a more subdued, competitive energy, and it was evident that our feelings for Megan were creating a palpable tension. In the weeks that followed, the dynamic between the three of us continued to evolve. We spent more time together, going on hikes, attending concerts, and enjoying lazy afternoons at the cafe. Megan seemed to genuinely enjoy both of our company, but her interactions with each of us were distinctly different. With Rob, it was the thrill of spontaneity. They would plan impromptu adventures and joke around in a way that was effortless and fun. Megan seemed to be drawn to his energy and enthusiasm, and it was clear that he was making an effort to keep things light and exciting. With me, the connection was more grounded and emotional. We would have long conversations about our hopes and fears, and Megan often sought solace in our quiet moments together. There was an undeniable depth to our bond, one that made me feel like I was falling for her in a way that went beyond mere attraction. Despite our best efforts to remain friendly and supportive of each other, the growing competition between Rob and me was impossible to ignore. The more we fell for Megan, the more complicated our interactions became. We both wanted her attention and affection, and the rivalry, though never explicitly stated, was a constant undercurrent. One afternoon, we all went for a drive up the coast. The scenic route offered stunning views of the ocean, and the day was filled with laughter and beautiful moments. Megan and I ended up sitting in the back seat while Rob drove. As we chatted, I found myself gazing at Megan, feeling a mixture of joy and sadness. I knew that the closer I grew to her, the more complicated things would become. Rob, ever perceptive, seemed to sense the shift in the dynamic. He made a point to engage Megan in conversation, keeping the mood light and carefree. I admired his ability to keep things easygoing, but it also highlighted the growing divide between us. As we reached our destination, picturesque spot overlooking the ocean, the tension was palpable. Megan and I walked along the shore, sharing a quiet moment as we watched the sunset. It was one of those moments when everything felt perfect, and I could sense that Megan was equally moved by the beauty of the scene. In that moment, I knew that my feelings for Megan were deepening, and I was faced with the reality that our friendship with Rob might not be enough to sustain the fragile balance we had. The love triangle we found ourselves in was becoming more complicated, and I couldn't help but wonder how it would all play out. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the ocean, I looked at Megan and saw a reflection of my own conflicted emotions. The growing closeness between us was both exhilarating and painful, and I could only hope that whatever decision Megan made would be the right one for all of us. The weeks of shared moments, laughter, and heart-to-heart conversations had brought us all closer. They also set the stage for a future filled with uncertainty. As I stood there with Megan, I couldn't shake the feeling that the journey ahead would be one of the most challenging and emotional experiences of our lives. It was one of those rare, quiet evenings when everything seemed to slow down. Rob and I had spent the day working around the house, but the weight of the unspoken words between us had grown too heavy. Megan had been on my mind constantly, and I could see she was also never far from Rob's thoughts. That night we were sitting in the living room, the silence between us more pronounced than usual. "Julian, we need to talk," Rob said suddenly, breaking the silence. His voice was tense, and I could tell he was struggling with his emotions. "This thing with Megan, it's not working." I looked at him, my heart racing. I knew this conversation was coming, but hearing it out loud made it all too real. "What do you mean, Rob?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're just hanging out with her. There's no need to make it complicated." Rob's face flushed, and he stood up, pacing the room. "It's not that simple. I see the way you look at her, Julian. I know you're falling for her, just like I am. We need to be honest with each other." I stood up too, my fists clenched at my sides. "I don't need you to tell me how I feel. I've been trying to handle this without causing any friction between us. But you're right. I do have feelings for Megan, and I can see that you do too." Rob stopped pacing and looked me straight in the eye. "So what are we going to do about it? We can't keep pretending everything is okay. Megan's caught in the middle, and we're both letting our feelings get out of hand." I took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. "I care about her, Rob. I really do. But I never wanted things to get this messy. I thought we could both enjoy her company without it turning into a competition. But it's clear that's not working." Rob's expression was a mix of frustration and sadness. "I didn't want this either. I thought maybe if we just stayed friendly, it would be fine. But seeing her with you the way you two connect, hard to ignore." The emotional tension between us was almost palpable. I could feel the anger and sadness bubbling up, and it was clear that we needed to address it directly. "Look, Rob," I said, my voice trembling, "Megan deserves to know how we feel. She deserves a chance to choose without us dragging her into our mess." Rob nodded, bass softening. "You're right. It's not fair to her. We need to be honest with her about what's going on between us." We both knew that this wasn't going to be an easy conversation, but it was necessary. We agreed to talk to Megan the next day, hoping that by laying everything out in the open, we could at least give her the chance to make an informed decision. The following afternoon, we arranged to meet Megan at her favorite cafe. The mood was tense as we walked in, and Megan greeted us with her usual warmth, unaware of the storm brewing behind the scenes. We ordered coffee and sat down at a quiet corner table, and I could see Megan's curiosity as we both seemed unusually solemn. "Megan, there's something we need to talk to you about," Rob said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "Julian and I have been feeling conflicted about our feelings for you, and we think it's important to be honest with you." Megan looked between us, her eyes wide with concern. What's going on? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. Rob and I have both developed strong feelings for you. We didn't intend for things to get so complicated, but we've reached a point where we need to be honest with ourselves and with you. Megan's face fell, and she looked down at her coffee cup, her hands trembling slightly. I had no idea things had gotten so intense between you two. We didn't want to put you in this position, Rob said, his voice filled with regret. But we can't ignore the way we feel anymore. We want you to know the truth so you can make the best decision for yourself. Megan took a moment to compose herself, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I've been feeling conflicted too. I care about both of you, and it's been so hard to navigate these feelings. I didn't want to hurt either of you, but I can't deny that this situation is tearing me apart. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of our shared emotions. Megan's honesty was both painful and necessary, and I could see the strain in her eyes as she struggled to process everything. I don't know what to do, Megan continued, voice breaking. I value the connection I have with both of you, but I don't want to be the cause of any more pain or confusion. Rob reached out and took Megan's hand, his voice soft and sincere. We need to give you the space to figure things out. We're both committed to being honest and respectful, and will support whatever decision you make. I nodded in agreement, feeling a lump form in my throat. We just want what's best for you, Megan. We care about you deeply, and we hope you can find a way to navigate these feelings without being overwhelmed. Megan's eyes filled with tears, and she squeezed Rob's hand, before turning to me. Thank you both for being so understanding. This is incredibly difficult for me, and I appreciate your honesty and support. As the conversation drew to a close, the tension in the room was palpable. Megan left the cafe to have some time alone, and Rob and I sat in silence, the weight of the conversation settling over us. It was clear that our relationship with Megan had reached a turning point, and the road ahead was uncertain. The emotional intensity of the moment had left us both drained, and I could sense that things would never be the same. The love triangle that had begun as a simple attraction had evolved into something far more complex. We were now faced with the reality of our feelings and the impact they had on everyone involved. As we left the cafe, I could only hope that Megan would find clarity, and that whatever her decision, we would all find a way to move forward with dignity and respect. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but I knew that facing them together, even if it meant confronting the pain and uncertainty, was the only way to find resolution. The days that followed our intense conversation at the cafe were some of the longest I've ever experienced. Megan had asked for time to think, and though Rob and I tried to respect her need for space, the uncertainty was agonizing. Every moment was filled with anticipation and dread, as we waited for her to make a decision that would forever change the dynamics between us. I remember the day Megan called me, her voice steady, tinged with emotion. Julian, can we meet? I've made my decision, and I think it's time we talked. My heart raced as I agreed to meet her at the park where we had spent so many afternoons together. I was eager to hear her decision, but a part of me was terrified of what it might be. Rob and I had been bracing ourselves for the possibility that Megan might choose one of us over the other, but knowing that it was imminent didn't make it any easier. As I walked to the park, I replayed the moments we had shared, the laughter and the heart-to-heart conversations. I thought about how deeply I had fallen for Megan, and I hoped that the connection we had built would be enough to sway her decision. When I arrived, Megan was already there, sitting on a bench under the shade of a large oak tree. She looked pensive, her eyes lost in thought as she gazed at the serene surroundings. I approached her cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hey," I said softly, taking a seat beside her. "Thanks for meeting me." Megan gave me a weak smile, and I could see the strain in her eyes. "Hi, Julian. I've been thinking a lot, and it's been incredibly difficult to come to a decision." I took her hand gently, my own trembling slightly. "I understand. Take your time." Megan nodded, and after a moment of silence, she took a deep breath. "I've made my decision, and I want to be honest with you. It's been so hard to choose, and I've struggled with my feelings every step of the way. My heart was racing and I could barely keep my emotions in check. Megan, I'm here for you. Whatever you decide, I just want you to be happy. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine for any sign of judgment. Julian, I've realized that my heart is with you. The connection we share is something that I can't ignore. I feel like I'm meant to be with you. A wave of relief and joy washed over me, but it was quickly followed by a deep sense of sadness. I knew that Rob's feelings were equally valid, and I could only imagine how devastated he would be by Megan's decision. I appreciate your honesty, Megan, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But I know this must be incredibly hard for you and Rob. I want to handle this with care and respect. Megan squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with tears. I've already spoken to Rob. He's hurt, and I wish things could have been different. But I hope he understands that this wasn't an easy choice for me. The conversation was emotionally charged, and I could sense that Megan was struggling with her decision. It was clear that this was a painful and complex situation, and the aftermath of her choice would undoubtedly be challenging for all of us. After leaving the park, Megan and I went to my apartment. I wanted to give her a sense of stability and comfort as we navigated the next steps. We talked for hours, sharing our hopes and fears for the future. It was a bittersweet moment, filled with both the excitement of our newfound relationship and the weight of the emotional turmoil we had endured. The next day, Rob and I met up to discuss the situation. I knew I needed to approach him with empathy and understanding, despite the whirlwind of emotions that I was experiencing. When I arrived at Rob's apartment, he was waiting for me with a somber expression. We sat down in the living room, and the silence was heavy with unspoken words. Julian, Rob said, his voice raw, I want to start by saying that I'm really sorry for everything. This situation has been incredibly hard for all of us. I nodded, my heart aching for both him and myself. Rob, I never wanted this to come between us. Megan made her choice, but that doesn't change how much I value our relationship as brothers. Rob's face was a mix of pain and resignation. I know, it's just that it hurts to see how things have turned out. I'm trying to process everything, and I hope that, in time, we can find a way to heal from this. We talked for a while longer, sharing our feelings and trying to make sense of the situation. It was clear that the bond between us had been tested in a profound way, and the road to recovery would be long and uncertain. As I left Rob's apartment, I felt a deep sense of sorrow. The choice Megan had made was one I had hoped for, but it had come at a great cost. Pain of seeing Rob hurt, coupled with the complexity of our new relationship, left me with a heavy heart. Megan and I continued to build our relationship, but the impact of the decisions we had made was ever present. We both knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, and that healing the wounds caused by our love triangle would take time. Despite the difficulties, I remained hopeful that we could find a way forward. The love Megan and I shared was genuine, and I believed that with patience and understanding, we could navigate the complexities of our situation and eventually find a new sense of normalcy. The weeks that followed Megan's decision were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustment. Although Megan and I were building our life together, the strain on my relationship with Rob was undeniable. The rift between us had become a chasm, and no matter how much I wished otherwise, it seemed impossible to bridge it entirely. Rob and I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but awkwardness was palpable. Family gatherings, once a source of joy, now felt like navigating a minefield. Conversations that used to flow effortlessly were replaced by stilted exchanges, and the warmth that had characterized our relationship seemed like a distant memory. I remember one evening when Megan and I were having dinner at my place. We had tried to keep things light. The weight of the situation was ever present. The room felt heavy, and I could sense the sadness in Megan's eyes. She had been supportive and understanding, but the reality of the fractured relationship with Rob was taking a toll on both of us. I hate that things are like this, Megan said softly, looking down at her plate. I never wanted to come between you two. I wish there was something I could do to fix this. I reached across the table and took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. It's not your fault, Megan. We all made choices, and we're living with the consequences. I know this has been hard on both of us, but we need to focus on moving forward." Megan nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "I just feel like I've caused so much pain. I hope that in time things can heal between you and Rob." Despite my efforts to stay positive, the reality of our situation was inescapable. Rob and I tried to reconnect, but our interactions often ended in awkward silences or strained conversations. The bond we had shared as brothers was now tainted by the complexity of our feelings for Megan, and rebuilding that trust seemed like an insurmountable challenge. One day, I received a call from Rob. His voice sounded hesitant, and I could tell he was struggling with his emotions. "Julian, can we talk? I think it's time we had a real conversation about where we stand." I agreed, and we met at a small cafe, a place where we used to go frequently before everything changed. Rob was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table by the window. He looked up as I approached, and there was a mixture of sadness and determination in his eyes. "Hey," I said, taking a seat across from him. "Thanks for meeting me." Rob nodded, his face reflecting the weight of the conversation ahead. "I've been thinking a lot about us, Julian. It's been rough, and I know things will never be the same. But I want us to at least try to find some resolution." I appreciated his willingness to confront the situation head-on. "I agree. It's been painful, and I hate that we're in this place, but I'm committed to trying to make things better between us." Rob took a deep breath, his eyes looking distant as he spoke. "I know that Megan is important to you, and I want you to be happy. I just need to figure out how to move on and come to terms with everything." We spent hours talking, sharing our feelings and acknowledging the hurt that had come between us. It was a difficult and emotional conversation, but it was also a step toward healing. By the end of our meeting, there was a tentative sense of understanding, though the road to rebuilding our relationship would be long. Over time, things began to improve. Rob and I started to find a new equilibrium. We slowly reconnected through shared interests and mutual respect. Even if the old familiarity was gone, Megan remained a part of our lives, and her presence served as a reminder of the choices we had made. Megan and I continued to build our relationship, and while it wasn't without its challenges, we found solace in each other's company. We worked hard to create a life together, one that was filled with love and support, even if it was marked by the scars of our past decision. The process of healing was gradual, and the wounds of the past didn't disappear overnight. But with time, we learned to navigate our new reality with grace and understanding. Relationship between Rob and me might never be the same, but the effort we put into mending our bond helped us find a sense of closure. One day, as Megan and I were walking through the park, the same place where we had first confronted the complexities of our situation, I reflected on the journey we had been through. Megan took my hand, and I could feel the warmth and love between us, despite the challenges we had faced. "We've come a long way," Megan said, voice filled with hope. "I know it hasn't been easy, but I'm grateful for where we are now." I looked at her, my heart full of gratitude and affection. "I am too. We've faced a lot, and we've managed to find our way through it. I hope that, in time, things will continue to improve for us and for Rob." Megan nodded, her eyes reflecting the same sense of hope. "Me too. The journey hasn't been perfect, but we've made it through together." As we walked hand in hand, I knew that our path had been marked by pain and challenges, but it was also filled with moments of growth and healing. The love that Megan and I shared was a testament to our resilience, and I hoped that eventually the scars of the past would fade, leaving us with a future that was filled with promise and new beginnings. The road ahead was uncertain, but with Megan by my side and the effort to rebuild my relationship with Rob, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The journey had been difficult, but I believed that in the end, we would find a way to move forward and create a future that was defined by understanding and forgiveness. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you next time.